before we start, we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we gather, as we do so electronically. We pay respect to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the important roles of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples within the outdoor recreation community and on the land, sky and waterways used for outdoor activities. And CORF also acknowledges the support provided both to CORF and the outdoor sector by the Queensland Government. So thank you again for joining us. My name's Dom Courtney, I'm Executive Officer of CORF. Mark Squires is also joining us. I think Huberton Witch is with us, and Angela Wright. So, well, thank you to the staff for all the support that they provide to the sector and to me as well. But also we have some members of the CORF board with us, and welcome. Thank you for your contributions as well. And we've also got some reps from interstate organisations, including I saw Jamie from Outdoors WA is on the line. I'm not sure if there's any others, but yeah, welcome. And yeah, as I said previously, we will have we make the recordings of these sessions available, so they'll be on our website for later viewing, and also on YouTube. I'm not sure how many, whether they're quite a YouTube sensation yet, but you never know. We'll see how they go. Bit of an agenda for today, but I always have that last dot point, any other matters. If there's anything anyone wants to throw into the mix, please either put it in the chat, as we'll use that as we go along. But if there's anything else, we've got a bit of a smaller group today, so if anyone has any anything you want to talk about, please just sing out. There's a bit of a list there, but it's been about the same list pretty much for the last few weeks, so last few sessions. So yeah, I just wanted to flag. I mentioned right at the start, a few people have joined since then, that I think it's about time we look at moving these to fortnightly rather than weekly. But yeah, just wanted to have a discussion about that as well as we go along. So maybe we'll have a chat about that at the end. Yeah, if there's anything else, please pop it in the chat or let us know. Sing out, happy as we go along. So thank you. Just a reminder too, I do forget to remind people, there's a whole heap of dedicated resources on our webpage. So just if there's other information you're seeking, particularly directly around COVID, but also right across the outdoor sector, and we're actually doing a project at the moment about how we can modify our website to reach out more, particularly around different outdoor activities, and making making it more accessible for the general public rather than the industry focus. So we're looking at some of that as well, as far as something that people seem to need at the moment. So yeah, but there is a lot of information on our website if you need anything, or you can just reach out to Mark or myself or Hugh or Angela, obviously, or anyone else from CORF. Yeah. My standard reminder, today was actually the due date for nominations for our awards, but as we've traditionally done, we have extended the award period, nomination period, for an extra week. So nominations will close 100% guaranteed next Friday, the 28th. And there's the 8 different categories there. I've highlighted them in nice bright yellow for you. So yeah, nominations via our website. It doesn't need to be War and Peace. I think I've said it before. The judges seem to enjoy it if the nominations aren't too long. It lets them get the nub of the issue, and the reason for a nomination is always valued. So you can nominate yourself or nominate other people or organisations. Yeah, Mark's just shared the information there in the chat as well, so that you can all click through and save that for later on to fill out a nomination. So, Mark, did you want to mention anything on that, or did?
Yeah, sorry, hi. Yes, good morning, folks. Yes, please do nominate for the awards. As you have possibly could guess, this year we won't be running an awards dinner. We'll be doing all the presentations online, and we haven't quite worked out the details of that yet, but we'll let you know about that very soon. Probably because of what's been going on this year, nomination numbers are down. So, you know, from an odds perspective, get in soon. The chances of you getting a place or a finalist position is pretty good. But we would definitely encourage you to nominate. You know, we all know folks have done some really good things out there, and it will be good to have them have that noted by the sector and by yourselves. So I'll look forward to seeing them rolling in across my computer screen in the next day or two. Thanks, folks. Thanks, Dom.
Does anyone have any queries about the awards, or anyone want to, anything like that on that? Because as Mark said, not that we're not running a book on any of. There's no sports gambling going on here, of course, because the outdoors people wouldn't do such a thing. But it is a good year to be nominating for it, and I think a lot of people have been a bit overwhelmed by what's happened from the last few months with COVID, and maybe we've forgotten that. You know, there was months before that and years before that when a lot of people have been doing some awesome things in the outdoors. And these awards aren't just for what's happened in the last 12 months. They go further than that. So, yeah, do want to encourage nominations on those ones, please. So, yeah, I'll be interested to hear an update from Mark next week on how many came through.
And also, if I can add too, you know, you may not think of somebody you might want to nominate, but you probably know other people who could. So, you know, pass on the message to your friends and colleagues as well, because they might have somebody that they've got sort of tucked away in the back of their minds who will be eligible or appropriate for an award nomination.
Thanks, Mark. Cheers. I just said Laurie popped a comment in there. Pete said g'day, but also Laurie's just said, is New South Wales eligible? They are the Outdoors Queensland Awards, Laurie. I'm not sure if you noticed that small detail, but they certainly are eligible in the fact of if someone's running a national program that happen to be based in New South Wales, but can show that it's done terrific things in Queensland. Yes, I think there was a program in Northern New South Wales last year that was one of the finalists as well. So I don't think it necessarily rules things out, particularly if you can show that it's delivering programs that are relevant, you know, have Queensland as a catchment. So yeah, it's certainly, there's some wriggle room in that space, but they are the Outdoors Queensland Awards. Anyway, moving right along. I'd just like to call on Angela Wright, who's the Program Manager for Nature Play Queensland. I assume a few people on the call will know Angela. She's been heavily involved in the outdoor sector for 1 or 2 years now, I think you'd have to say, Angela. And I'd like to ask Angela just to speak to the Outdoor Recreation Pathways project that she's been working on in her role as Manager of Nature Play Queensland. So I'll hand over to you, Ange.
Thanks, Dom. Hi, everybody. And thank you for the opportunity to share this trial project. It is a trial project at the moment because we're still working out what the framework for it might be, and it would be awesome to have your help to do that. But what we've discovered from a lot of our research with the nature play community is that they are very keen to know what happens next, and we get that in all of our research. We ask the question, you know, what happens when they're not 12 anymore, and what we have discovered is that we've done very little scaffolding for our nature players across to the outdoor recreation sector. And we have, as you'd probably may be aware, you know, we have handed out 500,000 passports. We've just done a survey that had 99,000 responses to it of our passport, the success of our passport, with a lot of information in that. We have also, we have over 30,000 Facebook followers, and let me tell you, I think we put out a post the other day that had my phone number, and I reckon I heard from half of them. So, you know, they're an active community. So what we'd really like to do is to be able to work with Outdoors Queensland members to break down some of the participation methodologies for so that we can share that on the and provide some real life scaffolding on our Nature Play website, but also, you know, to work directly towards outdoor recreation, because we have children starting, you know, from very young age, that, and I can demonstrate that in a moment. I have an example whereby they have got because they're spending so much time outdoors and out in recreating, that they really are the audience and participation development for the outdoor sector. So the project is actually about providing better access to a range of outdoor activities provided by the Outdoors Queensland members. We want to work with you, our clubs and our organisations, to map out those pathways from childhood into teenage years, and for families and individuals, basically for a whole of life participation. The objectives is that we would work across the state. We would try to develop a framework that transitions nature players into become outdoor recreation participants, and we would communicate that in a variety of ways, and a whole bunch of, you know, providing them resources, training, running campaigns that have a much more activity-based. So it's moving on from play and directing that playfulness and that experience in the outdoors into an outdoor recreation activities, and develop a whole range of clear messages around that. As I said, mentoring, creating spaces, facilities, and just unlocking some of the spaces, and also working backwards, so that if you've got space or land that you're using, and that you have families that come out, we can work with you to increase the range of nature playing that you can have on your site for all the people in the family. So the strategy is to identify Outdoors Queensland members and also nature play activity providers who'd like to be involved in an ongoing basis. We would then facilitate those planning sessions and work with those with you and other organisations, either individually, if that works for you, or in small collectives around similar activities. From there, we'd like to develop that framework and map out some of the pathways for each individual activity, and then develop the resources that we can then use in our campaigns, in our programs, in our outdoor lessons, that sort of thing, and in our nature play spaces development. You know, we might do information packs, develop kits, that sort of thing. And that we would then work with Nature Play Queensland families who have been with us for a long time, and actually trial some of these activities and trial the framework with them. So just to finish up, I have two more points. One is that we're currently operating a case study with the Queensland Moto Park. And let me tell you, it's been an absolute honour to work with the Queensland Moto Park and the families out there. We've developed a memorandum of understanding with the Moto Park on a range of issues around nature play, helping them develop spaces. During the school holidays, we interviewed a number of families that were out there for a school holiday program. Because it's a campsite, they were all camping out there. I think the program was over 3 days. And we did a range of surveys with those families and with the children. The miracle of that particular visit was that we actually found a nature player, a young fellow called Jackson, who his family had decided to become nature players when Jackson was a baby. And they enrolled him in an education provider, a nature play education provider, early learning centre called Clearview, who's been doing forest learning for a number of years now with fully trained forest educators. And during that time, they made conscious decisions to do a whole raft of nature play activities with him. We interviewed his father. They knew everything about nature play. It was extraordinary. And but Jackson's dad is a dirt bike rider, and so Jackson started very young age dirt bike riding, and he's now 11. And we were just so excited to meet Jackson as being a real live nature player who was now a fully fledged outdoor recreation dirt bike rider, incredibly talented, incredibly articulate, and it was just an absolute delight to meet him. So from the case study, I'll just take you on my last slide through some of the common themes that we found in the interviews. And what we'd like to do is to conduct a larger survey with Motorcycle Queensland to see if we can't find a whole raft more families, to look at what common themes might be in how their children and how those families got into dirt bike riding and motocross, and then map those themes across Queensland, and just, you know, where the participants are coming from, and how it is that they managed to get there, and what the physical literacy journey for those families has been. And from there we would write a framework and a pathway program for dirt bike riding, and out of that would be some resources. So just to finish with, and thank you very much for listening, the findings that we did find, for example, and this is a really nice note to finish on, is that what we discovered, that parents are not risk averse. These parents were epitomised what we want nature play families to be, is that they were just letting their children take risks and sorting out issues for themselves. Most of these families, or a lot of these families, had access to private property for riding, whether it was their own property or family's property. So that was an interesting factor. The high levels of family involvement and very close sibling relationships. So these families were very connected. That not all wealthy, but it certainly, there's a bit of money involved in dirt bike riding, but they're not all wealthy, and they travelled quite a long way to get to the moto park. There was an interesting low levels of participation in team sports. These were children that actually loved to do individual pursuits. There was quite a bit of crossover between mountain bike riding and BMX riding and dirt bike riding. So they were riding a number of bicycles and motorbikes. Then what we discovered from being there for the day was that the children demonstrated extremely high levels of coordination, strength, concentration, endurance, confidence, self-sufficiency, decision-making. They were helping each other. So we're talking about 7-year-olds helping 5-year-olds pick their bike up and get going again. I mean, it was just really incredible. The parents were always there, but were standing back and allowing the children to help themselves first. We also discovered that there were a lot of self-taught riders or parent-taught riders. So that's an interesting one, that it's really a family activity. So I'm going to leave it there and just put it out there that we'd really like to involve other people. So that the Moto Park one is a trial to start developing what the framework might look like, what pathways look like, but clearly we need everyone involved. And so I just, if you're wanting to get involved, please give me a call or send me an email, and we can take it from there and map out how we do it. It won't all be the same as the Moto Park. It will be different for every different activity. But we'd love to work with you. Thanks, Dom.
Thanks, Angela. Does anyone have any questions or queries for Angela? Sorry, I'll put you on the spot, Angela. Just thought if anyone has any questions. But the real call to action is if everyone wants to have a think about their operations, and I don't imagine there'll be too many clubs and organisations who aren't keen to have more people engaged in what they're doing. So it's about whether Nature Play and Outdoors Queensland can work with you to help with that and get that transition from a program that's been designed as 0 to 12 and what happens beyond that for the kids, particularly getting them into the different activities. I did say to Angela the other day, I saw that image of that young kid on the bike, and it just makes me jealous that I didn't get to ride a motorbike until I was in my 20s. And every time I see kids on the little bikes with all the gear, I just go, oh, you lucky little devil. But if anyone has any questions or anything else, I'll just pause for a moment, and if anyone wants to ask any questions of Angela.
No.
No, otherwise, yeah, just Angela's contact details are obviously on the Nature Play website. Mark shared that before, or he just shared it in the chat there with the email address as well. So yeah, please do get in touch if you'd like more info on that. Yeah, thank you very much, Ange.
Thank you. No worries. Thank you.
Moving right along, we have another guest speaker. I've talked about the blue card law changes a few times in the last little while. These come into effect on Monday week, the 31st of August. But I was talking to Andrew Critter-Boyle this week about what he's found with it, and I just suggested he's been working on that for his organisation, so I just suggested it might be worthwhile if he could share some of his experiences in getting, I guess, engagement in that system. So I'll hand over to you, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Dom. So I had a few emails and various things come through from Blue Card Services about being involved, like setting up my organisational portal and various things, and I started looking into it. And one of the things that I think you find with what's happening after the 31st of August is that they're removing the obligation on employers to actually do the verification of identities. So all of the stuff after the 31st, essentially people, you don't have to involve an employer at all in getting your blue card. All you have to do is go online, fill in your details, put in your driver's license number, and then your blue card stuff goes into process. I suppose the biggest thing that I've found is that the Blue Card Services people have formed partnership with Queensland Transport. So essentially what they're doing is palming or partnering off the identification service to Queensland Transport. So they'll essentially, if you have a Queensland driver's license, your blue card will be processed and back to you within 5 days. So from application to getting back, the guys at the Blue Card Services office, I went in and talked to them when I was putting in my organisational portal forms. They told me there was going to be a 5-day turnaround is what they're shooting for. But there's a couple of caveats with that. So one is if you have a blue card is only valid for 3 years, but if you have a driver's license which is 5 years old, is a 5-year driver's license, and your blue card becomes due in the last 2 years of that license, Blue Card Services won't accept the photo, which is now going on your card, that's more than 3 years old. So you actually have to go into the Queensland Transport Service Centre and update your CRN to make sure that your photo is less than 3 years old for any application. So I sort of figured that this is probably something that's going to be painful for if you're employing lots of people and having to try and get that stuff going, because on the outset, it's pretty much just a case of if you've got a Queensland driver's license, apply for your blue card and you'll get it. But there's a few little bits and pieces in there that can slow that notional 5-day process down. The other thing too is if you're getting people from interstate, one of the changes is now you can only use someone for 7 days without a blue card. So if they've come from down south and they're only coming up once every calendar year for 7 days, you're fine. If you're going to use that person potentially more than once, then they have to have a blue card. And the only Blue Card Services said that they're going to have a remote pack for interstate people, but it will take a lot longer to process than getting a CRN. So if you're bringing people up, obviously the easiest way to do it would be to get them up earlier with all their documentation, go to Queensland Transport, get a CRN, which is apparently free, and then have them apply. Then they can apply for their blue card pretty much straight away after they've got their CRN stuff in tow. So it's a little bit of a trickier process for the interstate people than probably what it used to be. Because now the other part that they've got is there's a portal, organisational portal that you nationally have to set up. So the hard part is with it, to set up the portal, you have to set up your user account with Blue Card Services to get an OP number, and then you actually put in your application for your organisational portal with that OP number for you attached to the form. So it's sort of back to front. You can't do the organisational portal until you've got the user portal stuff sorted. So that's one that you probably need to look at. But once it's set up, it took them, I think, about a week and a half to set mine up. And it came back to me, I think, 2 days ago. And yeah, everyone who you've formally linked to, or in the past that you've linked to your organisation should be on that list. So there's no sort of reason why you can't see whether someone's got a valid blue card in your organisation. Just look through the list and it says it's there.
But Critty, yours would be a pretty complicated one because you'd have, well, I don't know how many in the past as far as people linked to yours. Like yours would have to be one of the more complicated, I'd imagine, if it's working like that.
Yeah, it's really, when I looked at it and when I've gone through, it's pretty much everyone on my database. It matches up with the thing, but we were pretty religious about getting the linking form because everyone would go from 3 different employers and they'd have their blue card from this one time and then from me the next and someone else the next. So you always had to keep that linking form done up. But I'm sure when I start going through it sort of more rigidly, I'll find that there's some people that have probably been missed along the way, which I think in every organisation you'll find somewhere along the path there that there's something weird and wonderful that's happened. But the other good thing about the organisational portal is that after October 31st, all you really have to do is get that, see the person's card, write their blue card number, name, and birth date or expiry date, I can't remember which it is there, into the portal, and it'll bring up, if that's the correct details, it'll bring up the details, and you hit link, and it links that person to your organisation, so you don't have to worry about forms being out and back and all that sort of stuff. So going forward, it will be, the process seems like it'll be a lot simpler, but there's probably going to be a few sticking points along the way. But I'd suggest if you haven't got your portal stuff set up, that's probably the first stage that you need to go through, and then just start checking who you've got on that portal against who you're actually currently using to make sure that everything lines up. So,
I got a question for you, Andrew.
Yeah, go, Graham.
Mate, the portal that you're talking about, how did you end up getting that up and started? Because I was talking to Blue Card Services on Wednesday, and they said that they're sending out information to organisations piece by piece. So, because I'm trying to do the same for us, having a reasonably large workforce now. So I really want to get on top of the portal thing. So did they contact you directly or?
Originally I got an email about the portal, but the form, I think the form's relatively straightforward to find. I'll have a look, Graham, and I'll shoot you a copy of it.
Thanks, mate.
So yeah, because that was the part that I think was the key to it, was getting that portal form in.
Yep.
Okay, thanks very much, Critter. I guess, yeah, it is an important piece of work, the blue card changes, but yeah, it sounds like the system's going to, once it's all up and running, we've got our heads around it, that I think it's going to work well from the sounds of it. Just a matter of getting everything sorted and getting in the system and getting the system working for us. Thank you very much, mate.
Dom?
Anyone else have any questions for Critter? Yep.
Yeah, I got a quick question. Is this the the end of interstate travel for freelancers. If they're limiting the amount of time you can be in another states or another jurisdiction with only holding your own state's blue card or working with children's card. Are we all going to have to be multiple card holders in multiple states to work everywhere now?
I think that will change a bit. I think Queensland has been for quite a while quite strict about not really accepting interstate cards. I'm pretty sure in Victoria, I think you've still got like 30 days or something. And there's a few other sort of exemptions, I suppose, in the other states that we don't have here anymore. But it's probably not a bad idea, I think, to start looking at, you know, if you are going to do a lot of the interstate stuff, to really sort of look into those, because I can't see that we're going to have a harmonised blue card system anytime soon. So it's probably just worth exploring. I've got to explore what's happening with Victoria a bit more. But yeah, I think Queensland sort of was the first state to install blue cards. So I don't know how much the other states actually follow in that regard. But yeah, it's certainly something to consider, Dave.
Yeah, they just saw there was in the chat there about the national system, which there was talk about that in the Royal Commission into the sexual abuse in institutions, and there was talk about developing a national system. I just don't think it's happened, and I think the Queensland government's decided they needed to get on with these revisions to their system and the changes to the system. I think the thinking was that maybe that will become the national system or it will get harmonised, but I think they've decided they're not going to wait around to see it happen, so they've brought in these changes. But yeah, I agree, it makes it difficult as far as people moving between, you know, having to have multiple blue card checks when realistically, if you don't have a New South Wales, if you're in New South Wales, the check up here is actually almost irrelevant, because if you've lived in New South Wales all your life, the chance of you having committed an offence up here is quite ridiculous. So yeah, so anyway, that I think there's work in the background on that, but at the moment it's about understanding what the system is, and maybe it is holding two of them if you're going to work across state borders, which is a shame. I just saw Rachel's comment, has held a card for Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland at the same time in the past, which, yep, that's part of the ridiculousness, I think, and that's having three different state government systems running it. Like, imagine if you had to have three different driver's licenses, or 7 of them if you're driving around the country. It just doesn't really make sense. So, yeah. Thank you very much, mate. Thanks for adding your experience into the discussion today. Appreciate it.
Yep.
One of my regular reminders, the training that AQIA offers, and it's free, it's online training, which is all about the COVID safety and the return to play guide that's out. I did it a month ago. It's one of the best online trainings I've done for a long time, so I highly recommend that. It's been done, I think it's up around 3,000 people have already done that training in Queensland, and it's only for recreation, sport and fitness. So it does show the value in it, and it's a good thing for every organisation to have at least one person trained in it, but there's nothing wrong with having multiple people from your organisation. And I think that training itself would actually cost a bit if an organisation was going to develop it themselves. So I think it's definitely worth a look, and the website's there that you can visit. These small business adaptation grants, I've mentioned them quite a few times. I think it opened at the start of July, the round 2. The Southeast Queensland, it's closed, but it is still open for regional Queensland. I think they're up to about 75% now full. So if you're in regional Queensland, I'd say get in sooner rather than later for that one. And if the government wants to give you some money, I say take it. So yeah, just have a look at that one as well. The other one that's mentioned a few times too, is the government's restart funding, which is all about this package they've put together to encourage people to get out and active and to help clubs and other organisations. The one that's still open is the fair play vouchers. I know that Scouts and Guides certainly use the fair play vouchers, but so do quite a few other recreation clubs, and they're not just for sports, they're for recreation as well. So those are still applications are open now for that one. The other couple, you can see there, they've closed the Active Clubs Kickstart and the Active Restart Infrastructure Recovery. Those are closed now. So, but yeah, just wanted to mention the fair play vouchers. And also the Active Industry Fund at the bottom. So Corth as a peak body, we get support under that, and some of our other members get some government funding under that, including AFRA. So Claire's on the call there. I'm not sure if there's any others reps from state level orgs on the call here who get some funding under that. So they've changed some of the payment schedule under that to support us, which is great, and we do appreciate it. Thanks to the government for that one too. Just rolling right along. I've mentioned this a couple of times too, this insurance inquiry that the Australian Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman is running. So it's definitely worth telling your story to the Ombudsman about this inquiry. There's a link there to their website. There's an online survey, and also you can just email them with your story, it's really about affordability and availability of insurance for small business. That's what the inquiry is about, and whether the insurance industry is giving small business a real go. So I think that's what they want to hear about. So yeah, be happy to suggest you fill out that survey so that our industry is well represented in that space. If you've had any difficulties at all with insurance cover, please let them know about it. When the government wants to know about these things, we need you guys to let them know if you're having any dramas in that space. I saw Pete, the Outhaus Orators online. Pete, do you want to mention we had a good session on Monday focused on women in the outdoors. I understand you were out in the outdoors yourself, so unable to join it. But did you or David, or I don't know if Sheree or Ellen are on the call, if any of you would like to?
Yeah, hello Dom. Greetings everyone. Yes, apparently a very relevant and pertinent chat was had by everyone in the Outhaus past Monday. It went well beyond the time frame, with people still in the room, apparently at 6:30 in the evening. I was working down at PCYC Bornhofen. Shout out to those guys, great program, and had a great time. Next week in the Outhaus, we're actually unpacking training. We're talking about outdoor ed training. Back to school, I believe, is the agenda title. So if you're interested in training, or where training happens, or have done some training, or have some thoughts about training, then please join us in the Outhaus 4:17 Australian Eastern Standard Time, or 2:17 Western Standard Time next Monday, the 24th. Thanks very much. And David has put the link to the website up in the chat. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Pete. I need to update my slide and include the web link there, don't I? So the fancy website with all the resources as well. But yeah, thank you.
Just a note on the slide, that email that is actually on the slide is perhaps a bit out of date. So okay. we have a new email address as well, which is David will probably put in the chat before I can say it. So.
Yep, no worries. I will update my slide on the Outhaus, mate. Thank you. And there you go. You were right. Is it contact or contract there, David? In the email. All right. I'll update my slide for next time anyway. So thank you for that. And thank you for all the work that you guys are doing, the whole team in the Outhaus. It's certainly been a great initiative as far as connecting people, particularly in the outdoor ed space, as far as a good chat about different topics. Moving on to our favourite topic that is an ongoing matter, the industry COVID safe plans. I did want to put a bit of a reminder there about that SR_COVID-19 email address. Happy for you to send through queries to me. I've had a couple lately that were just a little bit outside the box, and I've literally forwarded and copied the person in who sent them to me, forward them onto that SR COVID-19 and just asked if they could give a formal response, because some of these queries, it's just a bit confusing on the actual scope of the plans. I think when it's a traditional outdoor rec activity or outdoor ed provider, no dramas, I'm happy to provide some info, but there's just been some interesting ones that have come through with some other areas that you might not consider fit in those plans, but they actually do when you think it through. But I've had to sort of forward them onto the government a bit. So I just wanted to mention that. Like I say, anyone, if you want to contact me, contact Corf, that's great. But yeah, also just a reminder on those official queries. And they do get back to you pretty quickly. They've been quite good at reacting to those queries and answering the any issues. I put the updated statement of compliance there. It doesn't actually say which plan you're using, which is interesting, but they just want that statement of compliance to be up in all sorts of businesses so people understand it. So yeah, I think that's the point from the government. So our plans haven't been updated for a few weeks, which is a wonderful thing in my book, but we are actually looking at some potential changes to the outdoor ed providers plan, potentially around the 100 limit on group sizes. So that's certainly something that we're looking at putting a submission together on. And we ran a session on that on Wednesday this week, and we're going to put together a bit of a submission out of that session. So just as we go through, if anyone has any questions at all, please feel free to speak up. I've sort of got a bit of a chat here, a bit of the changes that were made, and this hasn't changed since I think it was the 23rd of July on that previous screen. The field of play concept seems to be something that people are trying to get their heads around. It's very much a sporting terminology, and it's pretty much that once you're engaged in the activity, then you don't have to worry about the physical distancing, and you can have full contact on the field of play. And that's it's probably an easier thing in the sporting world as far as when the field of play, where there literally is a white line you can step over. For our world, it's a little bit more difficult to determine, I suppose, but sometimes that's good for us. We can consider where is the field of play and where does it stop and start. So where do you have to stop and start with the some of the COVID protocols. But one reminder on that, one of the key things, and this is still sporting terminology, but it says that the field of play stuff is only permitted if there's no mixing of teams and no spectators allowed in with active participants. So for us, that's not really a drama for most of those controls. But yeah, just one thing just to remember in that. And the event framework principles and strategies is another important inclusion in the plan. So that's because our plan actually does touch on events, on the outdoor events, as well as the normal just running an activity. And the outdoor education plan, as we've got there, it's got a clarification about group leaders and activity leaders. It is okay to have different activity leaders working with the client group. So you can have multiple activity leaders with the client group. And then about the adoption of protocols from the retail food services industry plan in the dining space. But there is still a requirement that all patrons be seated when eating or drinking if you're providing them with food and drink. So that was a change that the Chief Health Officer brought in I think that was about 3 or 4 weeks ago now. So I think that nothing's changed as far as I'm aware on that, unless anyone's heard anything differently from the latest direction from the Chief Health Officers. I think it's still a hard and fast rule that everyone must be seated when eating or drinking when you're providing food from them, basically in a commercial setting. Thanks. Mark's just added a link to the COVID safe plans too. So the big one that we've been talking about a lot is the implementation as well. So as I said, we had that session about the 100-person limit on group sizes. We're going to put a submission together on that. So it's really about going back to the Chief Health Officer and asking the questions about any changes to it. And there has been some positive actions in that. I also wanted to acknowledge too, the work that Laurie at Outdoors New South Wales and ACT has done in the last week and a half in relation to the outdoor education space, particularly in New South Wales, but it flows further than that because Laurie and Christian Venues Association and the Australian Camps Association put out an open letter about the value of outdoor education and why it's important to continue. So I don't know, Laurie, if you wanted to speak to that. Nice to see you there, but did you want to speak to that piece of work and the campaign that's underway at the moment?
Yeah, sure, Dom. I'm hoping my internet's going to hold up. In Sydney at the moment, we've got really bad internet. But it is a team effort, but it's so important that we start building the awareness of our sector a lot more broad and try to get some equilibrium at the policymakers level. As we can see, we don't have our own portfolio. Our policymakers are deciding things that go against what we can provide the health sector and certainly in the mental health space particularly. So we've 61,614 people is substantial and really exciting. But what now we've got it, that's really, really key and important. So thank you, and we'll continue on the effort because it is a federal issue and we've got to use this opportunity to leverage.
Okay, thanks, Laurie. Yeah, you are dropping out a fair bit, but yeah, we certainly got most of what you're saying there. Thank you. Yeah, we did. So I'm also the president of the Outdoor Council of Australia, and Laurie's on the board there. But we actually forwarded the open letter with a letter from the Outdoor Council to the Prime Minister to try to get that bit of traction at the federal level as well. Corf's also shared that letter and some of the other state peak bodies across Australia. So it certainly is a collaborative piece of work. But thank you to Laurie for leading the way on that. And Laurie's just shared it on the chat there. So thank you for that, Laurie. Also, I just want to mention the idea of the proactive site visits. Public health units, the couple that I've met with have said they're more than happy to do those proactive site visits if any operators are keen to have them come out and have a look at the systems that you've put in place to be COVID safe. There's a list of public health units and their contact details on that link there on the screen. They seem very keen to do that because that's their normal job. I think they'd rather be doing that than be doing contact tracing, to be honest. They'd rather come out, check out systems and maybe give some suggestions of other ways to improve. But for them, it's about them understanding how we're operating as well. So they seem really keen to do that. They spent several hours at the Curramundi Rec Centre and also at the Tallabudgera Rec Centre and they were kind enough to invite Mark and myself to go along to those visits respectively. And it's quite amazing. It's great to have a chat to them about what they're expecting to see from operators and in relation to the industry plans. And yeah, it was a really good chance to have a discussion rather than, it wasn't like an audit. It was really quite an open conversation about how the industry plan is being implemented and what's expected from them, or by them as well.
Excuse me, Dom.
Yes, mate.
Is it possible to capture the essence of what was discussed at that site meeting?
Yeah, Danny. I mean, it was quite specific to the operation itself. Like they were looking at how is the centre getting, or how are you storing the contact details for contact tracing reasons, but even to the point of, well, what do you need to do as far as sanitisation of a harness? If you've got, at Curramundi, they had a good look at the indoor climbing wall that's there. And they're talking about, well, how often, what's practical as far as even cleaning the handholds on that, of that wall and things like that. Like they were quite interested down to the quite detailed area, but they were also interested in the processes that the camp had put in place. So they talked right through about when, from the booking in process right through to delivering activities, the accommodation spaces. They actually went and showed them through some different rooms, some for the teachers, some for the students, and explained how the differences. They took them to the dining room. So it was pretty much a full tour of the whole operation, and they said, if you've got any questions, please ask us. And it was pretty good. But yeah, there wasn't, I'm not sure, like as far as particular items, it was more just a discussion about some different parts of it as well. But yeah, I think it would vary.
We can engage them, have them come out and go through much the same things, or, you know, is there any way that someone actually wrote down, you know, the outcome of what you should do with handholds on a climbing wall, and we could all benefit from that rather than,
Yeah, they were actually open to whatever's reasonable for the rec centre to do. Like they were saying, and they probably did say, as a rec centre, as a government organisation, I think they said, look, there might be a higher level of expectation from the Sunshine Coast Rec Centre, but then they said, however, there's pretty high expectations for every operator out there anyway. So they didn't give any sweeping generalisations of this is what you must do. They were quite open to how are you going to do this, and you know, if you can show that you've thought it through and you've done it. They were happy for it to be done in different ways, I think, is probably the thing that I took away from it. I don't know, Mark, if you wanted to comment from what you saw at the visit.
Yeah, I was quite impressed. They were clearly interested in detail, and we took quite a lot of time walking around the site and looking at specific examples of what they've been talking about previously. So I thought it was an interesting experience.
But it's not like they stood there and said, no, you can't do it that way. They were very open to understanding why the centre is doing it in a particular way. And they're actually really good, I thought, as far as they did as much listening as they did speaking. So that's probably the key thing, Danny, which probably doesn't answer your question completely, but they certainly didn't hand down, this is how it must be done. They were happy to consider how, I think they actually recognised they're not the experts in that space that you guys are. And they were happy to have things explained to them on why it's being done in a particular way. So they did know that there are different ways to skin a cat, I suppose. And that's actually a confusing thing for all of us, I think, at the moment. A lot of people just want to know what it's the Chief Health Officer's people expecting, but I don't think they have a black and white answer on a lot of these things, and that makes it harder for us. But I think we need to just show them that we can manage these risks as much as we can.
Yeah. I guess the other day you shared a bit about they're a little more specific to do with contact tracing and some of the timelines that were required. Have you seen that in a fact sheet or anything?
The contact tracing, yeah, that one is a hard rule. What they say on that one, and it's on their website, but it says the contact tracing is any organisation in any industry, if there's a COVID outbreak, you need to be able to provide the details of anyone who's visited your venue within an hour for that particular period of time when they have it. So, and I actually had a little step back and thought an hour is a very tight time frame, but that's for them. That's so they can get out there and actually start working on that contact tracing. And that one becomes difficult if you've had a group of or multiple groups of 100 people there over different weeks, and then they come back to you and say, righto, last Tuesday, we need that list of everyone who was at your site within an hour. That's a legislative requirement under the COVID stuff. So the hour is the hard number that they've set, Danny, and so it is on their website. Yeah, and the way the rec centre originally had proposed, I think they'd be happy for me to say this, they'd proposed that the school would maintain all the contact details for the kids, but the rec centre has a list of all the names. And what they said was, we'll get onto the school and the school will get you that information within an hour. And they said, well, you can do that, but you're taking a risk if that school doesn't respond within an hour, that's on you as well. So they were basically saying you should have it. If you want to be completely confident you can comply with the legislative requirements, you really should have the contact details. And it's two different types of contact details. It could be a phone number, an address, and an email, or an email address. Two of those three is what they expect for every single person who's been at your venue or at your activity. So that's the level of expectation that the public health unit has if they're going to do that contact tracing. And they're hoping not to have to do it, obviously, but that's what really you need to have. So it is an important thing. As long as you've got a system in place to keep that and not use any of that information for anything other than the contact tracing, because there's privacy requirements around that as well. All right. David's just mentioned about the industry views on cleaning and climbing rules from inside the Outhaus a few weeks ago. Thanks, David. I just saw a bit of Tanya said about the QR codes, and a few others are using that too. Yeah, it does seem to be working quite well. There's quite a few people. QR codes seem to have found a place in some of this stuff. The other one I did just want to mention too, the COVID safe events side of things. Just wanted to flag that they've released, the government's released a frequently asked questions, and it's really thorough. Like it goes, I don't know how many pages of frequently asked questions on the events. It's really good. There's a link there from the QTIC's website, but it's on the government website too. And it's worth a look if you are running any events, because it actually does a lot of work on that, about the industry framework that they've released and the interaction with industry plans. So I just wanted to flag that. That's just come out last week. So that's definitely worth a look. That's pretty much us. I know we're just about to hit time. I saw Laurie put a note earlier about a Northern New South Wales operator, and I've had a similar question, being told that Queensland schools can't go across the border to go to a Northern New South Wales outdoor ed centre, and that therefore the operators in Northern New South Wales are going to lose bookings. So that's obviously a concern for operators who are just over a border, and it's partly because I think in the past, most of us have seen the interstate borders as pretty much an artificial line that some surveyor drew on a map in 1901, or maybe before that. So I think at the moment, I'm not sure that we'd have any luck with requesting any exemptions on those, even on a case by case, even though the fact that a group may drive, get on the bus at the school and drive across the border, get out at the centre and not go anywhere. I'm not sure how we go with that, because I know that the Chief Health Officer has come out and the Premier have come out quite strongly about trying to avoid any exemptions in relation to the border, because they're obviously pretty concerned about any potential for spread and community transmission. But I think it's a real concern because, I just saw Laurie's statement saying that it's about bookings for 2021, which is even more concerning if people are starting to pull out on that one. The only thing I'd say is maybe the option is for the centre to be talking to the staff about, talking to the schools about if the conditions change, the camp can go ahead, book it in on that basis, and if something change, if if it can't go ahead, then it's a matter of considering different options. It is a difficult one, but because that uncertainty is probably what's driving bookings away from happening. And yeah, it's a real concern because particularly for the very northern New South Wales school camps in that northern New South Wales, their catchment is effectively Queensland schools, as well as some of those larger schools up there. So that's a pretty big problem. I just saw Matthew's comment that 2021 plans doesn't seem to be a focus, but will be, hopefully it'll be better than now. Yeah, I completely agree, Matthew. The problem is for outdoor education, a lot of schools plan 12, 18 months ahead with their school camps. So that becomes an issue. If there's uncertainty about what's going to happen next year and they just start cancelling camps, you can lose a year, 2 years. So yeah, that is certainly a drama. So yeah, I think that one's certainly one we need to keep an eye on and try to get some certainty. Hopefully things will improve. Both New South Wales and Victoria seems to have improved markedly in the last couple of weeks, but yeah, hopefully things will improve there and not go backwards up here too. We're pretty much on time. I did notice a fair bit of discussion about the QR codes and check-in and how it works. So yeah, creates Graham's just noticed there, it's go straight to a web page, fill in details and creates a list of attendees, which is a great thing. And they can do it all on their own device, which is awesome. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm not sure if there's anything else that anyone wants to raise for quickly. We are slightly over time, but if anyone has any other topics you wanted to raise, happy to open the floor.
Dom, if I can just say that all the links that get shared on these chats, I make available on the Coffee and Conversation webpage. So I'll be updating those this afternoon. So all the stuff that was shared today and things that you've been sharing in your presentation will be there as well. And I will be doing some updates following this conversation to our COVID safe information on our web pages as well.
Terrific. Thanks, Mark. The other one I did want to mention is the frequency of these sessions. I did mention it. I tend to think it's time to drop it back to fortnightly. If anyone has strong objections to that, I'd be happy to hear about it. But I think maybe we go to doing these fortnightly. If there's some red hot issue that comes up, then we need to run an extra one in between and go back to weekly. We can do that. But they do take a fair bit of time to prepare and put together. I just wanted to put it out there to everyone on the session today. And if anyone thinks otherwise, but yeah, otherwise I'm sort of keen to go to fortnightly sessions. Does anyone have any burning desire to keep with the weekly option?
Dom, do you just want to spend more time on islands, do you? Yeah, kicking back. Yeah,
no, mate. It's sort of more about spending more time doing everything else that seems to come in. But yeah, it's not just so I can go on holidays every second week.
I'll just say from the Outhaus perspective, the topic about cleaning gear and ropes courses and climbing walls, and maybe we're not promoting our own video material well enough. That's been covered and talked about, as I said, 6 weeks ago. So yeah, if we can point people who've got questions like that are getting to you, Dom, back to our resources, and perhaps we need to, with our new website, create a better tagging system so people can get specifically to information. We're not the be all and end all of information, but we have addressed that topic specifically in the past. So we'll try and do better with that. But we'll miss you, Dom, if you're not here every week. What are we going to do at 11 o'clock?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Maybe it needs to have an encore Outhaus presentation, 11 o'clock on a Friday, mate, on the off weeks. No, not up for that.
Way too much work already.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, anyway. I guess if anyone else, I mean, obviously, like I say, if we need to, we can always go back to running them weekly. But I think at the moment, it might be a, little sign. Maybe I'm being overconfident, but I'd like to just see if we can ease it back to fortnightly and then see what happens. So on that note, we've gone 5 minutes over today, so I would have only had to do 55 minutes next time anyway. So we'll leave it at that, and maybe we'll re-adjourn in a fortnight's time. won't have to do another session in the meantime. But thank you very much to everyone for joining us today.